The dark side of Australia's housing crisis. Welcome to our deep dive into Australia's housing crisis, a complex issue impacting millions of Australians. Today, we'll explore the reasons behind skyrocketing house prices, declining home ownership, and the everyday struggles of Australians trying to make ends meet. A shocking recession. In 2023, Australia entered a per capita recession for the third time in 40 years. This economic downturn hit Australian wages hard, bringing them down to levels not seen since June 2011. Despite devastating bushfires, the COVID-19 pandemic, and extended lockdowns, Australians cited the cost of living as their greatest concern. The housing boom. Australia has experienced one of the greatest housing booms in history. Since 1973, house prices in capital cities have increased by 36 times. Sydney has now become the second most unaffordable city in the world. So, how did we get here? Australia is renowned for its stunning natural beauty, world-class beaches, vibrant cities, and vast parks. It looks like a paradise, but living here is easier said than done. The cost of home ownership. To buy a median home in Melbourne, a family needs to earn at least $170,000 per year. In Sydney, that number rises to $260,000. Compare this to the median household income of around $100,000 in both cities, and it's clear that home ownership is out of reach for most Australians. This isn't just a Sydney or Melbourne problem. Since 2020, house prices in Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth have increased by over 50%, while wages have only grown by 12%. Young Australians are particularly hard hit. Home ownership rates for those under 34 have declined nearly 25%. One extreme example of the housing crisis was a home in Sydney sold for $3.5 million despite lacking a toilet, power, and a kitchen. If you think renting might be a better option, think again. Median rents in Sydney exceed $3,000 per month, and Brisbane isn't far behind at $1,500. Historically, Australian rental rates increased modestly each year. However, since 2020, annual rental rates have skyrocketed by over 8% per year. People are struggling to pay 2020 for rental prices with 2011 wages. The demand for rental units is insatiable, leading to fierce competition among renters. Immigration and housing demand. One major factor contributing to the housing crisis is immigration. From 2022 to 2023, Australia welcomed nearly 740,000 people, the highest number in modern history, and to 100,000 more than pre-COVID levels. This surge has primarily impacted rental housing, as most immigrants are temporary visa holders who rent their homes. In suburbs with high immigrant populations, such as Melbourne's southwest and Sydney's inner southwest, rents have jumped 18% in the last year. Immigrants often outcompete locals by sharing units with more people to stretch their dollar further, increasing rental yields on real estate. Supply shortages. But immigration isn't the only culprit. The construction industry is struggling. In 2023, Australia completed only 170,000 dwellings, the lowest number in a decade. Since 1966, the number of homes built relative to the population has been declining. Australia's preference for suburban living over densification has contributed to this issue. Sydney and Melbourne have about 2,000 people per square kilometre, compared to 6,000 in London and 4,400 in Munich. These cities are some of the least densely populated in the world, and the approval process for new housing developments is notoriously slow. Tax incentives and speculation. Another critical factor is tax incentives. Australia introduced negative gearing in the 1930s to encourage investment in rental properties, allowing investors to offset rental property losses against their personal income. This policy, combined with other favorable tax treatments for real estate investments, has encouraged speculation in the housing market. For example, in 1999, the government reduced capital gains tax on real estate sales by 50%. This, along with the ability to hold real estate in retirement accounts, supers with significant tax benefits, has made real estate investment highly attractive. Impact on productivity. These policies have had broader economic impacts. Australia's focus on real estate investment has diverted resources from other sectors, leading to slower productivity growth. Between 2010 and 2020, Australia's average annual labour productivity growth was only 1.1%, significantly lower than in previous decades. Australia's R&D spending as a percentage of GDP is also low, at 1.7% in 2022, compared to the OECD average of 2.4%. This lack of innovation further stifles economic growth. Income and corporate taxes. Australia collects a disproportionate amount of revenue from income and corporate taxes. The average income tax rate is higher than in most OECD countries, and corporate tax rates are 6.3% above the OECD average. These high taxes discourage business investment and innovation. The path forward. Australia's housing crisis is a complex issue that requires comprehensive policy changes. Solutions include incentivizing business investment, lowering income taxes, abolishing negative gearing, reducing capital gains incentives, and removing red tape to encourage development. Ultimately, informed and engaged citizens can drive these changes. By understanding the root causes of the housing crisis, Australians can advocate for policies that create a fairer and more sustainable housing market. Together, we can tackle this challenge and ensure a better future for all. If you found this analysis insightful, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth economic and financial content.